Hello, I'm Crypto Sanity, and this is Crypto Gold Rush, a series where I hope to teach you how to get rich and not die trying. This is the first video in the series, other than one where I was really doing stream of consciousness, talking about why I'm making this whole thing. I'll put that link in the about. I really recommend you watch it uh, after you watch this one, if you haven't already seen it. Um, I was not planning on recording the video that you're about to see as the first one in the series. It's supposed to be an outline going through all the things that we're going to talk about in future videos. But I've been watching so many people lose money. I just, I just really had to make this emergency video. It's called Please Y'all, DAOs Aren't Magical Money Printers. In this, I'm going to be talking about how OHM models actually work. So OHM forks are all the rage with pretty good reason, and but there's a lot of misperception about what they do, and it's really costing a lot of people, either in losses or in potential gains. So if you're interested in OHM forks, if you're in an OHM fork, I highly recommend that you watch this whole thing. But to start with, we're going to go over why anything has value. Ohm forks have this like magical mystique about them, but at the end of the day, they're just they still have to have some sort of underlying thing that gives them value. After I go through that, then I'll go through what the actual Ohm model is and on a very basic level, and then talk about what we can follow up with if there's interest. So how to think about value. This is true for anything. This is true for any sort of instrument, anything that you could ever possibly trade. Doesn't matter what it is. You have everyone pays attention to the market cap. They pay attention to the price. They pay attention to how much is out there. But what actually makes up the market cap? Well, fundamentally, in any sort of instrument, you're going to have some portion that makes up income. So in this example, it starts off with this, this market cap in the beginning that starts increasing and then kind of bounces around a bit way before there's any income. So this is, basically a startup model. Um, you have some company or you have some sort of token or something like that that has some sort of utility that's going to be bringing in income. Before then, you have nothing. The other part of value that can come from really underpinning the market cap is how many assets you have. So the difference between income and assets, of course, is that income is how much money is flowing in. Assets are something, cash or property or something that you could sell for money. These two things combined, they provide what's called the balance sheet of a company, or you could say a balance sheet of a token. And I think over right now, no one talks about balance sheets in crypto, but I can guarantee you in the next few years, people are really going to start talking about balance sheets. The balance sheet, how much you have in the assets, as well as looking at your cash flow, those ultimately are what provide tangible value. Everything else, the whole market cap in this gray area, that is what I would call the premium. This is what investors are thinking, could be worth something. at some point in the future. And so they're willing to pay for it now in order to potentially do well when the project takes off or the business takes off and ultimately gets assets and income. Now, what I want to be very clear about is this is always and forever true, even in crypto. And you might say, like, is it always true? I'm like, forever, forever, ever, forever, ever. And I'm not talking about like Miss Jackson, like, I mean forever. It is always true. The thing you have to do though is you have to find your model. You have to understand what you're putting your money in and what the model is in terms of how it relates to this. So obviously in like a meme coin is never going to have assets, it's never going to have income. So the entire thing is just premium on whatever basically that people throw money in, what we call intangible value. Whereas other projects, they're going to be very heavy in just focusing on what we call utility, which is eventually trying to get money to flow in, and other ones fit in between. So what's very important is that you understand the model that are you investing in, and I'm going to have like at least one video talking about this to really help you get a broad background to be a good investor. But for this video, I'm just going to talk about one model, and that is the O model. And the O model is actually like really straightforward in this way because there's only two things that matter. There's only two ways to make money, and one's dependent on how much money do people put in after you've put in money, and what income does the treasury bring in, which again is like related to how much money is coming in after you put yours in, but it's not necessarily from like people buying in. Now you'll notice that on here there's nothing about passive income. I'm going to go into why uh, or I should say, when passive income, I mean just from the yield, just from the API, and I'm going to go into why. But first, I'm going to talk about what the actual O model is. So the O model, it's really doing something simple here, but there's a lot of misconceptions about it. And what it does is it grows the supply over time until the price hits $1. That's it. Once the price hits $1, the um, if it falls below $1, then the treasury will start buying in order to try to stabilize the price back to $1. But ultimately, the model itself is to keep inflating until the price hits $1. That's um, that's basically it. And I think there's a lot of I know there's a lot of misconception about this. So what does this mean practically? Well, the inflation comes from the APY. This comes from the yield, that you're getting as an individual. And I meant to do this slide where I actually did these like point by point, so you're not overwhelmed. But oh well. So what matters to you is not the APY ultimately, because the APY is flowing to all token holders that are present in the protocol. What matters is the percentage of the protocol that you own. Why does it matter? Because if you want to sell out, like your value, like how much money you have, is what percentage of the entire market cap that you have. Doesn't matter how many tokens you have, it matters what percentage of the market cap. So all APY does is it increases the number of tokens, not the liquidity. So going back to this, as the supply goes up, unless people keep putting in money, the price is just gonna keep falling. And so while everyone looks richer on paper from having a good yield, they can't all sell out at once at a continuous price. And so the what the yield is actually doing, what the API is actually doing, is it's boosting the market cap and making the protocol appear to be expanding. But unless people are throwing in money, it's not. It's just an illusion. If the illusion works, if people aren't selling and it looks like the market cap's going up and up and up, then more people might jump in. They might say, oh, this is a really good bet. And then they come in and they put actual money in, which then makes the perception of the market cap, or it makes the perception that it's working become closer to reality. Of course, as they do that, then the APY itself will then start increasing. And so you basically, it's just a Ponzi. That's all it is. There is nothing magical about it, It is just a Ponzi. It's Ponzi-nomics. The later entrants, like all Ponzi's, the later that you get in, the more that you're in a position to get dumped on. And so ultimately, even though they try to bamboozle people with like all this like 3-3, all this hat stuff, like all whatever your blah blah is, it's still ultimately a gang of chicken. And the higher the APY, well, what's that do? It makes the inflation increase faster, which then puts more people on paper in profit. And so it actually increases the chance that people are going to sell and that you will lose money if you jump in too late. So the higher the APY, the faster this curve goes up, and the more money has to come in just to keep price stable. I'll get to the next slide in a second. So people are trying to tell you that this is a passive income play, but it's not. There is no income coming in other than other people throwing money in. The APY is not like a bank account. It is just the rate of inflation. And if you actually sit and you think about it, like, you know, if you use these calculators, if you try to treat it like an actual APY like you get at a bank, you just get into like obscene like insanity. So like this one's at the Snowbank calculator right now. I just picked it because I thought they had a pretty calculator. And this is saying like I put in $3,000 of investment right now, cranked it up for a year, and that $3,000 becomes $16.6 million. Sounds pretty good, right? But the only way that could happen is if there is $418 billion or $412 billion that was put in over the next year. Otherwise, there's no possible way that everyone could get this return. And Snowbank's yield at this point isn't even like that insane compared to some other forks. So uh, yeah, obviously that can't happen. And really, I would like if I was a financial regulator, I would actually with the communication that it is right now, I would actually be prosecuting people for fraud, like straight up, because they're trying to. So many of these things communicate, and they say you get this much money per day, but you're not. You're just getting inflation in a Ponzi sort of scheme. So I'm not saying that own forks are bad. I'm not even saying this model is actually terrible. I actually really like this model if you understand how it works, if you understand what the actual like end game is. Um, and so I just wanted to briefly talk about how to actually value these to figure out whether it makes sense to get into one. Um, I'm going to be using Jade, but all of these have the exact same numbers. The important things that you need to pay attention to are the market cap, which is directly related to the Jade price, which is these two right here, and the treasury balance, which is directly this number and the backing per Jade. The third number that you have to pay attention to is the APY, which I go on the staking page and I actually look at what is the 5-day rate of investment. So with these like three pairs of numbers, you can get a pretty good feeling for where you are in things. Um, what I see when I look at this is that the ratio here, the backing of the Jade per the price, this is looking quite good. It's almost 50%. Old models are still really new, so we don't actually know like what the long-term ratio, what a long-term good ratio is. But if you look at a range of like better ohm forks, it's normally around like 3 to 5. So just being at 2 here, to me, this is saying like Jade is actually probably undervalued at this point. Um, However, you also have to factor in the 5-day ROI. And because this APY is insane, it's crazy, then the amount of inflation over 5 days is 25%. And what that means is that this Jade supply right here, which is at 659,000, that's going to be going up 25%. So in order for the price to stay still, all of a sudden you're going to get another almost $50 million of market cap added, which is a significant percentage of this entire treasury balance. So actually, when you look at it this way, maybe this ratio, this like 2-to-1 ratio, actually isn't that good because it means that all of a sudden people are going to be sitting on much more paper profit and there'll be a huge temptation to like cash out. I don't know. I it, no other fork has this high of an APY with this much treasury, so who knows? But going back to like how everything is a game of chicken, like if you're invested in Jade, be be very aware of this. Be very aware that you're not actually gaining 25% a day. What's happening is it's making it's uh making it a game of chicken. That if this treasury balance doesn't increase at the same rate of as the ROI, if you check back in a few days and the treasury balance is still sitting around where it is, then actually you're getting poorer. You're not getting richer, you're getting poorer. Um, so I'm gonna make a whole video on like how to more properly value these own forks. I know from what I've done over so far, I'm talking really wishy-washy, which is partly because uh, it's actually quite complex, but it's also mainly because these things are so new that like who knows what the hell is going on. The important thing is to just understand, um, what the game is. Understand like how the APYs factor into how much you could potentially get sold out, and then kind of keep your finger on the pulse of how that particular own fork is doing. So I want to go over some misconceptions here. One is a lot of people think the treasury starts buybacks when market cap is lower than the treasury amount. So they think that when when this market cap value here is lower than here, it will start buying back the price, and that's not true. It only buys back when it's less than $1. So if you come across an own fork, and I have, where the market cap is lower than the treasury balance, uh, check in to make sure that there's not something really wrong with that project, because it could have a lot further to fall. Another conception is that 3-3 is winning strategy for everyone, or that there is a win-win strategy. And no, no, it's not. Like I said, um, with the inflation, everyone gets wealthier on paper, but it only delays when they're selling the 3-3. Not everyone can win. The only way that you can win is if the treasury is actually being invested into something new outside of the fork that provides returns. Going all the way back, the only way that you can have win-win is if you go from this period on the left, where it's all speculative premium, to the point where you actually have income flowing in on the right, and that income is building up in assets. Now with like this newer generation of own forks, they are starting to propose ways to use the treasury, and we'll see how well those work. I'm actually quite excited about these. I'm quite excited about the way of building up tens, if not hundreds, or even billions of dollars, um, and and deploying that in intelligent ways. I think it's going to create really interesting investment funds, but we're not there yet. We're not there yet. So keep that in mind. And then the other thing that they like to sell, all these old folks like to sell, is they like to sell being in it, getting your APY is better than timing. And they're like, oh, it doesn't matter if you buy at the high, you just like sit in there, and eventually it will be okay. No, that's not true at all. What the goal is you want to capture a percentage of the protocol. If that means trading, then you should trade. If it means that you just need to sit there and wait until it gets better value, then that's what makes sense. The only reason that they can say that being in is better than timing right now is because if you're early, and who knows what early is, you know, um, we could still be early in Ohm. Like if Ohm eventually gets to $50 billion, then everyone's still early. Then the Ponzi-nomics, guarantees that you'll be better off than jumping in later. That's actually all it is. But there's so much price fluctuation in these from like week to week, that timing is actually super important, particularly because everyone's playing a game of chicken. But the most common misconception, and one that I had for a very, very long time, is that there's something algorithmic about ohms, that there's something in the code that actually dictates what all these numbers are right here, the APY and how much to mint and whatever. And actually, no, devs can do whatever they want. They can set whatever APYs they want. They can ask for whatever assets they want and set the discounts they want. Everything in OHM is policy based. And this is by far the most opaque things in these OHM ports. It's the most important thing. Like literally the only difference between these projects is what how they tweak these numbers and how they use the assets, and yet they're very opaque about what their goal is and what their actual policy is. And I think this is terrible, actually. Like I think there needs to be a lot. They say they're DAOs, and yet there's no transparency on how they're actually planning on building the models. Um, so yeah, that's something I definitely want to have a larger discussion about. Talking about what is the point of the strategy that the policy that I just talked about ultimately is to build treasury, because the treasury is what drives the value in the whole protocol. And that either comes from more deposits, which they normally do through um, minting discounts, which is a policy decision on their end. And in a later video, I will compare a few different OHM forks and show how the discounts, you can see what they're trying to accomplish. Or it comes from income, such as LP fees, um, or now places are like talking about putting it to get lending or investments into things. So this, again, right now, this income thing is basically non-existent in any project. And it's all about how to attract more deposits for the future. And as long as that's true, you're in a game of chicken. I want to keep emphasizing this. So for next time, if there's interest, uh, leave comments, tweet at me, whatever. I'll be comparing different forks and showing how the policies as well as their stated objective for the treasuries, um, can give you some idea of what they're doing, so you can make decisions of if you want to be in things. And I'm also going to get into the advanced value analysis. So basically looking at what assets do they have in the treasury and how can you expect the value of the treasury to change as the price of their token changes or as the market changes. So that way you're not just looking at the the ratio here of the backing to the price and being like, oh, it's 2. That sounds fine, because actually some of these forks that I've looked at, this treasury balance is really sketchy. It's really based on things that can fluctuate a lot, while others are much more stable. And so yeah, so I'll be going over that. Okay, that's a wrap for me on this one. Um, this turned out to be a lot more uh, uh, direct. And oh my God, in my mind, I had so many quips and so many so much entertainment value in these things, and then it just didn't come out. But I I think that's because this is, yeah, we'll get there. Okay, so yep, do the follow, subscribe, like thingy, you know, whatever. I still don't really care about that. And otherwise, yeah, leave me your thoughts on this, ask further questions, and I will be coming back depending on the enthusiasm, I will either come back with a follow-up video to here with this one about ohm forks, or hopefully I'll actually be able to take a step back and go into the overview of what the actual crypto gold rush uh, course will be, and um, yeah, and then figure out how to fit ohm back into that. Okay, thank you everyone, and have a good day.